Hey, in today's video, I'm gonna show you all about the drywall bazooka. This is a level 5 taping bazooka. I'm gonna show you all about it, how it works, kind of inside and out, give you some close-up detail, and show you how to run it and use it. So we're gonna do that right after this. Okay, today I'm going to demonstrate this drywall bazooka. Now this was sent to me by Level 5. They're not paying me any money, so they're not telling me what to say. But I have used Level 5 tools for a long time. I've got an old mud box of theirs and I'm familiar with them. I've always liked them, at least in the last 8 or 10 years. They've come a long ways. I've noticed they've made a lot of improvements. And this thing here, I think it's built really well. Now I'm going to show you all about this thing, kind of how it works, the whole principles of it, and we'll walk you through some of the features, and then I'm going to show you a quick tutorial on how to use it. So what this is, basically, I'm going to start at the very basics. I know some of you will know this, but this is a tube that holds drywall mud from about here down. And you use regular taping mud or regular all-purpose mud, and then we feed paper tape up through here, and it does a lot of these actions automatically. It feeds the tape kind of semi-automatically. It feeds the tape, puts the mud on it, puts it on the wall, puts it into the angle, cuts it, and feeds the next round, and so on. Now it's a fairly complex machine, but once you get used to it, it's fairly easy to run. Like for example, I actually hadn't run these in over 25 years. I picked these up a couple days ago, and right off the bat, I had no problems. It's like riding a bicycle. So just, if you wonder if you can learn this, if it's too complex, just know that at first you need to take your time. You need to kind of understand how it works. There's certain things you got to do in a certain way, or you could cause jamming and problems. But once you get that, it just becomes kind of second nature, and there is a lot going on. So first thing is, if we were going to use this, first thing we got to do is get mud into it. Well, the mud goes in right here using a pump right here, which I'll show you here in a minute. And before we do that, we have to flip this lever here, because this lever is attached to a valve, and it also disengages the drive mechanism. So the way this works is there is a piston inside of here with a cable attached to it, and that piston gets forced down when we fill it up with mud, gets forced down to the bottom, fills this tube up. The cable is attached to this shaft right here, and as we roll this on the wall, it starts turning this. Now right now I've got it disengaged because you do that for filling. So let me go ahead and engage it. Now I don't want to turn it very much because it actually will start putting mud out. Okay, so if you watch this part right here, I've now engaged this to this, which is connected to this wheel. So when this turns, it will start turning that. That is winding the cable up around the shaft in here, which is going to start pulling that piston up, and then that is going to start pushing mud up out the top, and you'll see right up here at the top, mud starts coming out. So that's as far as I want to go, because I'm going to disengage it for right now. So when I disengage it, what I have to do is push this in. This round disc, it just free floats here. You just push it in a little bit and do that. Now this thing will automatically disengage itself when it reaches the end and it's run out of mud. So you don't normally have to do that, because normally what happens is that piston comes up and it actually hits a little rod right here. And I'll try and show you some close-ups every now and then and point to it on the screen because it's hard to do it from here, but it'll hit this rod right under here, and that pushes that lever up, which then squeezes that down for you. So then all you have to do is flip this lever. So it's going to push that rod up, squeeze that down, and then you just have to flip the lever over. And what that does is keeps you from breaking the cable, because when it hits the end here, if it kept going, it would just keep pulling and break the cable. So by coming up here and hitting that, pushing that in, that disengages this. So now it's no longer turning that shaft in there, and it can't come up any further and break the cable. So now down here we have the end where the tape goes, and the way you load this is the level 5 has this cool quick release here. I hadn't seen this before, but you just pull this, it pops right out of there. This lever is, or this rod here is captured, so you're not going to lose it. So it basically, you get that out of the way, you get your joint tape, and then you put it on here. So then you want to put it on here like this and let it roll over the top of this thing. So then you just re-pull on this mechanism down here, and we just slide this. Trying to do this on cameras sometimes hard. So we just slide this over in there, captures it. Normally I would do this on the pump right here, but I'm holding it here just because I'm doing this video. So then I'm going to flip it over for you. So then we take the tape and we feed it into this little guide slot. Now you can just push this tape right on through here because there's nothing stopping it at this point. And then if we pull this slide tube here, it also pushes the tape through. You can see it feeds it, and when there's a little resistance from the mud that's on it, when you go down, it slides down the paper. So there's a little pin right in here. I'll show you a close-up of it. This little pin is on a little spring, basically, and when you push forward, the pin bites into the paper just slightly, and that's what pushes it up. Then when it gets near the top, that little whole mechanism rotates over slightly, which allows the pin to come disengaged from the paper. So I'll show you right here. I've got it engaged, and if I pull down, the tape is locked because of that pin. But when I push it all the way up, I can now pull it back down because it's disengaged. There's a couple reasons for that. You want to be able to feed the tape out, and then you want it to let go of it. And there's times when you maybe get a little bit too much out the end, you can actually just pull a little bit back that way. So once you run it down the wall, now I have it disengaged, so it's not going to put any mud on, but so when you run it down the wall and you get to the end of your cut, you stop about 2 to 3 inches short of where you want it to be, because the cutter blade is in here, right about here, so it has to cut and allow that much to come out. You pull very firmly down on this, and it slides a razor blade across there, and it cuts it. And you can see, cuts it really cleanly. Now I'll show you where that razor is. We can do that by loosening this. It goes out the other side. We can pull this whole thing out the other side, and I'm going to show you a close-up of this. You can see that's a triangle-shaped razor. That's because it's meant to cut one direction, but as it gets dull, you can flip it over and get more life out of it. And then you're back in business. So if you notice it not cutting real well, you just flip that over once, and then the second time, you just replace it with another razor. And you tighten this back down, and that quick, you're back in business. Now, I want to point out that Level 5 does include some basic instructions. They've got other videos on their website. And another really nice thing about Level 5 is they include a lot of spare parts. There's O-rings, gaskets for the pump. There's a cable for the cable that I talked about. There's spare pins, there's spare cutter blades, spare springs, all the common parts that tend to break over time or wear out. They give you some in here. So that's a really cool feature that not everybody does. And I'm sure some do, but I know this company does. I like that. So now let's talk about some of this other chain mechanism. We talked about this. It turns this, which turns that. This chain pulls the razor cutter across. Now we got another chain here. What does that do? Well, it's actually attached to this little sliding piece of metal here, which goes down to the bottom, and there's this lever right here at the bottom, and when you pull that, you can see that it flips this wheel out. Now this is good for several things. It's good for inside the angles. When you push the tape in, you can flip that wheel out and it will push that tape in more, so it actually pushes it into the corner before you're going to roll it. It also is handy for times when there'll be times where, let's just say you let a little bit too much go out, and when there's mud on it, it will droop over. There's no mud, so it doesn't want to droop as much, but it'll droop over like this, and you go to put it up to the ceiling, it's drooping too much, you just push it up. This becomes almost like a finger. You can reach out and tap the wall, push the tape tighter to the wall. So you hold it like this with one hand on the slide tube, and the other hand you hold it at the bottom with your finger in this lever here, and that way you're ready to run it at any time. Okay, now for some basic maintenance. First of all, keep it clean. I mean, that should be a given. Don't go too long without cleaning it, like maybe every hour. If you're running it pretty heavy, stop and brush it down. Wipe off the chains and everything and get it so it's not getting all gummed up with dried mud and that. You can go hose it off too if you got that available, but at the very least, wipe it off. Get this out of here. You want to keep the tape out of the slide when you're not using it, when it's sitting around a while. It can sit there for a while, but if you're going to stick it in a bucket of water and let it soak for a little bit in between tasks that you're doing, take the tape out because it can get soggy and want to jam up. So when you first go to use this, it should be nice and clean. You'll want to spray a little lube on this. And I just have this Blaster Multi-Max. They say not to use WD-40, so I'm going to use this one. The solvents in WD-40 can tend to make seals and that swell up, I think, and disintegrate. So this one's a synthetic based, but they also say don't use silicone. So you want to just spray a light coating on all these moving parts, the chains, anything that basically moves. I like to put a little bit of oil on it, and you can use 3-in-1 oil. Is one of the things they recommend. And then you don't want to have it on here where it's just dripping off everywhere, because it can cause it to start gumming up that way too. So just a light coating on all the moving parts. And then, like I say, replace the cutting blade now and then if it's getting dull, because if it gets dull, you're going to pull sometime and it's going to just jam all the paper to the side and you'll have a jam. And that can be a bit of a nightmare to clean out. The way I used to clean it out was to just take a piece of metal strapping like on a pallet and run a piece up through the slide, push that jammed paper out. But this one has a release section here, and I think that would really simplify it. Mine, the last time I ran these was the Ames tools that didn't have this, and so with this being removable, I think you can reach down in there and grab a hold of the jammed up paper. So if it's not cutting well, there's two reasons. The blade is dull, or you let it get soggy paper. It can get that way just even if it's just sitting here on your pump for 15 minutes, and then you try and cut that soggy paper, it can jam up that way. So when you're done, you want to clean it out. So a good idea is to run it pretty empty near the end If you think you only have a little bit left, don't fill it all the way up when you pump it full, because you're just going to have to empty it out. So you get towards the end and you're all done. Take the taper or paper out, and you take and like put it on a piece of sheetrock, or you can stand here and turn it by hand, but you just turn this and pump all the mud out basically. So you could just run it across multiple times on that sheetrock, a pallet outside, whatever works. Get all the mud out, get it to disengage, then hose it off really well. You really don't want to try and wash this with a brush. There's too many nooks and crannies, so get a garden hose and take this cover off and just spray all down in here and just get it just as clean as you can on this end. Now if you leave a little stain like this and that, that's not the end of the world. I try and clean them up anyway, but they're going to get a little bit dirty, but the moving parts are what you're focused on. Anything that moves, even these wheels, everything should be clean. Take the paper tape completely out of the machine. Then when you get done washing it, put it all back together and lube everything again and just wipe that lube off. I like to leave a very light film because it can kind of gum up on here, which makes it harder to clean. So that's a little tip for you. Hey, you know, one of the secrets to doing quality work when you're doing your own drywall is quality tools. Now that's why I actually reached out to Level 5 last year and asked them for support of our channel, and they gladly agreed. They saw the kind of content that I'm putting out and they realized it fits in with the quality of their tools. So I want to let you guys know that I am an affiliate for Level 5. They're not paying me to say anything here, but if you decide to purchase anything, I do make about 5% on it. But get this, I'm going to be able to give you 10% off as an affiliate. You can't get that on Amazon. Now they have some really cool tools. They got everything from your basic hand tools. You can see mine have definitely been used. They're a little bit dirty right now, but not bad. These are stainless. They're not going to rust. They got all kinds of skim coating blades, including this, I believe it's a 30-inch model, all the way up through a full set of taping tools. So if you guys need any of this, I recommend them. I'll put a link down below to my website. That's where all my links are these days. Go to thatkiltedguy.com and you'll find the links to all this stuff and the discount code. So let me cover this slide a little bit more. This slide does several things. It feeds the paper tape up, and then when you pull it back, it's just free floating right there. It's not really doing anything. The way that little pin works is it moves. Let's see if I can show this up close. That little pin moves like that, so when the tape goes under it, it will just push it and keep going that way. It's when it tries to come backwards, that's when it bites into it. So that's why you can run it up and then just take off running it, because the tape will go on through it. You can have it right here and it'll keep going through it. But then when you reach this point, you see how right here it grabs this lever, which then pulls that chain, which is the cutter, and slides it across there and cuts your tape. Now let me show you how we load this and set it all up. Okay, first thing you want to do is you want to thin your mud down to where it's pretty thin. This is maybe even just a hair heavy, but you'll see it comes off here pretty thin like. So I can't tell you how much water because it depends on the tape you're using, the mud, but you want it to where it runs off pretty simply. If it's coming off in bigger, thicker chunks, you're gonna fight it. You might get it to work, but it'll be harder to pump, harder to push out of here, harder to wipe down. If you get it too thin, it's gonna drip like mad. So if you're wiping down, especially ceilings, and you can only go this far, and it starts dripping, you got it too thin. So you got to find that magic balance. Then you want to make sure that this is disengaged. This has to be over here, or you're going to pump mud in here and pump it right back out on the ground. And I've done that too many times to count. Because if you stop and you can tell by the feel of it, it's not empty. You'll come over here and manually disengage it, and if you forget, you get that puddle. So first thing I'm going to do is make sure there's mud all the way to here. It's just right below that nozzle opening, but you want it all the way up there so that you're not pumping air in here or you'll get a blister. Then you just put that nozzle opening right into there, lean it against here, and then you could go ahead and load the paper tape. And again, you just slide it in here, and that much. Okay, and then to fill it, you want to stick one finger inside here because that piston is going to come up, and when it hits your finger, you know to stop. If you go too far by holding it wrong, you could damage it, break the cable again. And you can replace the cable. It's not super hard, but it could take you 20-30 minutes, and that's just downtime you don't need. So the other thing is my bucket is only about 1/3 full, so it's going to suck it down pretty quick and try and suck air, so you got to watch. And that's why I have this thing. I can tap the mud and get it to re-flatten out, take away that possible air bubble. Now, one of the nice things about level 5 is they include the wrench to tighten these nuts, and I noticed I didn't get it quite tight enough. So if that happens, you got the wrench right here. Tighten the gooseneck down. Okay, that's the basic operation of it. I will run just a little bit out for you here just so you can see it work. You take, once you're ready to do that, you set this down. You got to engage this now. Now it's ready to run. You can get this mud to start feeding here. You can see when it comes up there, you want your joint tape right about there. If you go a little far, you can pull it back. Now we've got mud up there. You can also do it by turning this, and you just want to put it on the wall, push. Like I say, if it tries to come loose, tap it on there, get to where you're done, cut, and that's it. Now if you want to see how to run it in the angles and on the flats in more detail, I'm going to have a separate video about those. I hope that helped you out, and if you got any questions, ask them in the comments down below. And even if you don't, just stop down there and say hi, give me a thumbs up, and I look forward to seeing you guys on the next video. I got a whole series about taping coming out, so be sure and subscribe, and I'll see you then. Take care, everybody.